1.
Christine Pratt, Precinct 1.
Precinct 2 is myself, Matt Tavares. Precinct 3.
Dale Weber, Precinct 3, where it all began.
Precinct 4.
Precinct 4, Claire Montanari.
Precinct 5.
Steve Bryant for Precinct 5.
Right. And Steve is the clerk for Precinct 5. Precinct 6.
Betty Cavaco, Precinct 6.
Precinct 7.
George Brown, Precinct 7.
Precinct 8.
Don Williams, Precinct 8, Vice Chair.
Precinct 9.
Ramona Krogman, Precinct 9, Clerk.
Okay. Precinct 10.
Precinct 10, Alan Costello.
Precinct 11.
Precinct 11, Frank O'Brien.
Precinct 12.
Precinct 12, Pat Adelman.
There we go.
Okay. Precinct 13.
Precinct 13, Elaine Allegrini, Vice Chairman.
Precinct 14. No one here for Precinct 14. Precinct 15.
Precinct 15, where it continues, Wrestling Brewster.
Precinct 16.
Precinct 16, Pompey Delafield.
Precinct 17.
Joe Hutchinson.
Precinct 18.
Precinct 18, Carmen Lee Frieri.
All right, if you'll now all stand and join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. First item up is the approval of the minutes from June 20th, 2024. There were some slight changes to this, and I'm just going to, there's a couple of them, so I'm going to let you know what they are. We had a change of word. It would be on page 3 of the minutes from detailing atrocities to, that word is actually injustices. On page 4, just a misspelling of the word citing. And then on page 5, the omission of the word Joe Hutchinson stated, and the word should be he was for. And then on page 6, the votes were mistallied. So I believe it was Don Williams was edited to a no vote, Frank O'Brien edited to a no vote, Pat Adelman edited to a no vote, and Tom Begley edited to a no vote. So I'd be looking for a motion to accept the minutes with those changes, unless anyone else has any other changes.
Motion to accept with abridged changes.
Okay,
Second.
so I have the motion to accept by Mr. Brewster, and then Pompey Delafield second that motion. So because we do have 2 online, we will have to do a roll call on the vote. So Precinct 1.
Yes.
Precinct
Approved.
2, yes. Precinct 3.
Yes.
Precinct 4.
Yes.
Precinct 5.
Yes.
Precinct 6.
Yes.
Precinct 7.
Yes.
Precinct 8.
Yes.
Precinct 9.
Yes.
Precinct 10.
Precinct 10, yes.
Precinct 11.
Precinct 11, yes.
Precinct 12.
Precinct 12, yes.
Precinct 13.
Precinct 13, yes.
Precinct 14 is not here. Precinct 15.
Precinct 15 is yes.
Precinct 16.
Yes.
Precinct 17.
Yes.
And Precinct 18.
Yes.
And one other thing I'm just going to note, going forward, I think when we get the minutes, if you could hold off on your changes till we're all here in person, it just makes it easier to make the changes at once, and then we can accept the minutes, and then they can get published after that. It just works a little transparent, a little bit easier for everybody to see what came in as changes, okay? All right, the next item up, we did this, started last year, I think, first, with the town clerk, was the swearing in of the chairs by our town clerk, Kelly. So Kelly, if you'd like to come on up.
I have a question. How about vice chairs? Do we get sworn in too?
I will let Kelly
And
answer that.
clerks.
So again, last year it was, being new to the town of Plymouth, I realized the Committee of Precinct Chairs is a committee that is established by town charter. The precedent over the last 20 years, that, from my understanding, is that if the chair is not allowed to attend, people from the precinct can attend and vote in their place. That's the precedent. That's how it goes. I shouldn't say that how it goes. I don't necessarily agree with that, because to me, I used this example last year. If you heard the discussion last year, it's almost like the designee from the select board to the CPC, and if that select board designee wasn't able to attend, it wasn't like another select board member could attend and take a vote in that place. So, but I understand that's the precedent, and I also understand that the Charter Review Committee is looking at that. So that being said, I firmly believe, because the Committee of Precinct Chairs is a committee established by charter, you all should get sworn in, at least the chairs should be sworn in to take an oath that you'll uphold the duties and responsibility as a member of the Committee of Precinct Chairs. So I would recommend that the chairs stand up for this swearing in, and any of the chairs that are not present, either stop by and see me, or maybe I can come to the next meeting and take care of that.
Okay.
And are the chairs at home? Are they chairs as well? Okay.
Yeah,
So
yes, those
everybody-
are chairs at home.
Everybody raise your right hand. Do you affirm you have upheld the duties and responsibility as a member of the Committee of Precinct Chairs according to the best of your knowledge and ability, the charter and the bylaws for the town of Plymouth, the laws of the Commonwealth, and the Constitution of the United States?
I do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kelly. And I'll try and reach out to the ones that weren't here. I think we only had one, but we have about 4 sit-ins, if you will, so we'll go there. Okay, next up on the agenda, I'd like to welcome Chief Flynn up to talk about his communication connection team. This is something that I think initiative that Chief Flynn had been looking to do for a little while, and have better communication within the villages and the different precincts. So I know that there were some meetings that happened with the steering committee, village steering committees, but it was brought up prior to myself becoming chair that it was hoped that you could come before us and just explain it to everybody, and then all right, thank you.
Sure, thanks for having me, Dana Flynn, Chief of Police. I'd sent a memo to Chelsea. I hope everybody has a copy. It's the same memo I sent to the Select Board back in April, I believe, when I established this team, if you will. One of my goals when I became chief is try to expand our outreach into the community. As you know, we're a very large town, limited resources at some times, limited abilities to reach out and get to the most further southern parts of town, or in the outskirts, if you will. So I sat down with some officers, and actually, I get this idea, I'm not going to take full credit for this. I reached out to a couple other chiefs and found out what they did. And they have what they refer to as their community outreach teams. So not to copy them all the way, I called this community connection team. And again, almost kind of like at the basis of crime watch, neighborhood watch type things, but on like a kind of a grander scale where we talk about more things in all the villages in town. So got together with some officers, started with one of my captains, Captain Kevin Manuel, and we decided why not divide it up into 5 villages, almost like make a village liaison, whereas we can send officers out to each steering committee or introduce them to the steering committees at 10 meetings and become that conduit between the committees and the police department. As much as I would love to attend every meeting, I just can't do it. I'm just one guy. So put it out. I had quite a bit of response from officers. I selected 5 candidates. 3 of the candidates are school resource officers who already have a connection to certain villages within the town. They saw it as a great opportunity for them to expand their connection. They already had the connection with the kids, so they figured, why not bring it out to the rest of the village, if you will. So the issue here is, the goal here is to address, every village, as you know, is kind of unique in some of the problems and issues they have, some quality of life issues we want to help address. So we're going to attend meetings and help each village come up with plans and to address those certain issues, give them some guidance and support where they need it. So it's been a great success thus far. I haven't heard any negative feedback. The officers love attending the meetings. We do have one officer who, the Manamet Village, he lives in the area, so it kind of gives him a little added incentive, if you will. But I'll take any questions if you have them.
Well, I just wanted to thank you, Chief, for starting this initiative. I know that, each village or area in Plymouth that does, like you said, have unique challenges and different issues. So being able to have, almost like the schools have resource officers, having resource officers for those villages is going to be a great help. And I think it's a great initiative. I don't know if I guess we have a couple of questions for you. Sure. So I'm going to start with Mr. Williams, and then Claire, and then Mr. Hutchinson.
Chief, I'm wondering if you've done any work in Cedarville?
The Cedarville officer is Officer Alex South, or Smolinski now. She's been to meetings there. She brought back one request for them. They, as you know, the issues with the traffic down there, working with the state. Myself and my operations captain, Captain LeBreton, attended a meeting in the spring about it. I'm going to support the committee in any way I can. I'm getting ready to draft a letter, a generic letter as it will probably be right now. And I'm going to be presenting that to Lee Hartman to assist them in any efforts that they will be seeking to solve the traffic issues down there.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Mrs. Montanari.
I think this is an excellent idea. My husband is frequently on the waterfront driving to and from, and he's experienced bicycles, skateboarders around 9 o'clock at night, 9:30. You can't really see them. And he said it's almost like a challenge. They'll cut in front of him, and he's afraid for their safety as well as his safety. So I think having a committee like this and the response is an excellent idea, and we can bring any issues we have to your representatives. Good, thank you.
We welcome it. We're aware of the issues with the bikes. We started an initiative a month or so ago. You may not have seen it. We are taking heavy enforcement action on them, including confiscation of bicycles, which are allowed to do if necessary. If we receive no cooperation from the offender, we're finding it's mainly juveniles. Some parents are cooperative, some are not. But we're aware of it. They do frighten you. And you're correct. It's almost like they are daring you to do something. And it's not, I hate to say it, but it's not unique to Plymouth. It's happening everywhere, and I don't know where it comes from or where it started.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Hutchinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I live in Precinct 17 and Precinct 16 also, and we're not a part of a village steering committee, but we have traffic, as you know. And I hope that you might be able to extend your program to be able to meet with us as a community. We could probably organize 16, 17, I'm not sure about maybe 15, is that? No? Well, parts of Pine Hills is what I was thinking.
I would just, which village do you think you're more closely aligned with?
Probably Cedarville
Cedarville.
is,
Okay.
I would, that's a guess.
Sure.
I'd have to look at the map, but,
I would probably guess the same thing.
yeah.
So I would encourage you to attend the meetings. Officer Smolinski, she's very active and in tune with the committee.
Okay, thank you.
And if you want to reach out to me tomorrow, I can give you her contact information. We provide each steering committee with the officer's contact information, including cell phone and emails.
Yeah, I think at least the email and then the extension
Yep.
For each
But I think
officer
at
in
each
that
meeting,
memo.
they may have given out, I
Oh.
left an option up to them, to each
Right.
officer, for whether to give it out or not.
Okay, fair enough.
Understandably.
I have Ms. Adelman and then Mr. Brewster.
Thank you for coming tonight, and your officer was at our Cedarville Steering Committee meeting last night, and it was very nice to have an officer there. It was my first time attending as a Cedarville Steering Committee member, but there was rumors that the program wasn't getting enough, people weren't dropping by, and she assured us that it was not going to be eliminated, that
Well,
if,
the connection team?
yes.
Oh, no plans at all. Each steering committee, runs their own committees or meetings as they see fit. Our intent was to impose ourselves on any committee. As I said, this Cedarville seems right now to be the most active. But
And she did, it sounds like it covers a big area. She was saying, like, if she had to make a phone call, Cedarville is easier now because she can go to Cedarville to use the police phone.
Oh, you're talking
Coming
about-
from
okay.
Buzzards Bay.
Right.
And she also covers, well, that area also covers Bourne Road, which
Right.
is Red Brook area.
Right.
So it's a huge area.
Yeah, so the way we have our patrol sectors are divided up, were done a number of years ago, and again, it was back then it was based upon population calls for service. So some patrol sectors are larger than others. One other thing we did back in May, we opened up a satellite office at the Cedarville Fire Station down in the EOC. Chief Foley was kind enough to give us a space. We built an office down there complete with walls and doors and everything else. We're there 4 hours a day for set office hours, 2 hours during the day shift, I believe 11 to 1. Then in the evening shift, the 4 to midnight shift, we're there from 5 PM to 7 PM. Whereas people, if they want to come and speak with an officer about whatever may be on their mind, it saves them the long trip up to Old Exit 5. And again, it's our effort our intent is to let people in the outskirts know that they're not forgotten by us. Yeah.
Can I follow up
Sure.
question? Can local people use that station instead of going to the old Exit 5 station for,
Yeah.
like, to fill out an accident report or things like that?
So the intent of the office is to have the set hours, but if there are other issues that come up and you want to meet an officer there, every officer has access to that room in that office 24/7. So if a resident calls them, doesn't feel like comfortable, with an officer coming to their home or wants to meet to discuss other things, that office is available 24/7. Just so we have set hours, so people know if they have certain issues between those certain times, they can stop in.
And they're very polite to us. They open the door for us. That door is always locked. You have to walk up to the fire station, but they're there and for us. Thank you.
Very good, you're welcome.
Mr. Brewster.
Yes, firstly, I would just mention that village steering committees are managed by the planning board. I see the chair of the planning board in the audience. Not to put him on the spot, but I know there has been discussion of looking at some new village centers, so I'm encouraged. Secondly, I'd just like to thank you, Chief. The resource officers and this initiative just shows how willing you are and your force to go out in the community and create a great communication. So thank you so much for this initiative, and please let your officers know that the resource officers are really a great part of our community. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. This is my hometown. I wouldn't do anything less.
Don't
Thank-
forget the dogs.
What What's that?
Don't forget the dogs.
So Officer Smolinski have her
Yeah.
dog with her?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And kind of on that note, the program that you guys have with the canines has been amazing, and we saw it, unfortunately, in action, but working pretty hard in recent weeks. So thank you guys for that and that service. So, but thank you, Mr. Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I missed the memo.
Yeah.
I didn't see the memo that you guys are all talking about that has information for contact resource officers. If that could be reissued, that'd be.
Yeah, I think it came out a few weeks ago to us, but Chelsea, if you could make a note to please just resend that to the chairs. It's a one-pager. It's very, very short. Yep. All right. Well, thank you, Chief Flynn. I appreciate it. Thank
My
you for
pleasure.
taking the time.
Have a great night, everybody.
All right, thank you. Okay, as I'm sure Mr. Brindisi is excited to know that we're ahead of schedule, so if you could please come up. The next item on the agenda is traffic mitigation and safety, and this is stemmed out of conversations regarding Bourne Road, Halfway Pond Road, and Long Pond Road, and then kind of dovetailing into the Red Brook 80 Makepeace obligations. Now, Mr. Brindisi is not going to be here to speak on behalf of 80 Makepeace. Unfortunately, their representative couldn't be here this evening. They're out of town. But I'd like, Derek, if you'd like to get started and kind of start walking us through, that would be great.
So for the record, Derek Brindisi, Town Manager. Before I make my comments regarding the Halfway Pond Road intersection, I just wanted to go back on your last, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman. Chief Flynn, as you all recognize, has done tremendous work in his 3 years as chief. He talked to the Community Connection team this evening. He talked about the work he's doing in Cedarville around the substation. He didn't mention the summer impact team that he's developed. And what he also didn't mention is the new crime analysis team he has developed, which will be probably launching, I would hope, by no later than this fall. And that's looking at data and using data to help with their decision-making and redeploy resources in such a way that we don't have the same deployment strategy as we have in the last decade or so. So the chief deserves a lot of credit for what he's thinking really out of the box and thinking about community policing like no other chief has done here in the community in the past. So I wanted to publicly acknowledge the work that he's doing and his command staff and his frontline patrol officers that are doing the work day in, day out. So I think that's worth recognizing. And so moving on to why I'm here this evening. So a couple of things I just wanted to note. So we have Mr. Bill Coyle here, who's our Director of Public Works, and our Assistant Director of Public Works, James Downey, is here as well. So they're going to fill in all the white space as far as the details of this project. But I can say a couple of things. I did have the opportunity to speak with the president of AD Makepeace over the phone earlier this week, and he wanted me to express AD Makepeace's commitment to this project. They have not wavered, although it's taken a lot of time to get where we are today. They have not wavered, and they are committed to completing this project. I also want to point out that Mr. Downey and Mr. Coyle have been working very closely with AD Makepeace over the past 12 months on this. This was brought to my attention 2.5 years ago when I became town manager, and here we are 2.5 years later, and I know it predates my arrival, probably 4 years prior to that, trying to get this project to completion. But one thing I can say, and you'll hear it this evening, is that Mr. Coyle it'll be his 1-year anniversary, I think, in September, and in less than 12 months, we'll bring this project to fruition. And I know many of you that live in the area, especially the precinct representatives, have been waiting for this project for many, many years. So I'm going to end my comments and turn it over to the experts to talk about the details of this project and the timeline of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brindisi. Mr. Coyle?
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Bill Coyle, DPW Director. As the Town Manager indicated, James Downey, Assistant DPW Director, is also here this evening. I think I was here before you, I think it's past winter, to give you an update on this project. And if I remember at that time, we had talked about different timelines, you know, what's optimistically, and also worst-case scenario. And at that time, we still did not have the right-of-way necessary to perform the work in hand. I said most optimistically, we would secure the right-of-way this year and start construction this construction season. So I can say, and then the worst-case scenario was that we wouldn't secure the right-of-way, and we would have to go before town meeting and exercise our eminent domain authority to get the necessary rights to build the roadway. So I'm happy to say that with the efforts of Dan Gorsica, and in particular with James Downey, James went door to door and worked with the abutters, went back, looked at the plans, made some minor modifications to some of the sloping work. We looked at some of the driveway aprons, and with his hard work, and he went back to them, some of the abutters, and presented these changes, and we were able to get their signature. And I will say, you know, much appreciation to not only James, but also the abutters for their cooperation, because, you know, obviously it's impacting them as much as it's benefiting the traffic in the intersections. It's a huge benefit relative to that, but it is some impacts to their property. So again, thanks to them for signing the rights of entry, so we now have the ability to go in and do the work. So with that, as the town manager said, James and I have met many times with Dan Gorsica to get this project moving. And we're at a point now where the first step will be relocation of utility poles. There's a cost to do that. AD Makepeace has already paid the fee to Eversource to relocate the poles. There are 2 poles that need to be moved. They are working with Eversource to get that set up. I think that hopefully that'll happen, I'll say in a short time frame. I can't specify because Eversource, I can't tell you what their timeline is, but I do feel confident that it should happen soon, in addition to the clearing some of the areas that need to be cleared for the roadway widening. And speaking with Dan Gorsica, one of his items he keeps emphasizing to us is that there's a 6 to 8 month lead time for the traffic signal equipment. So, but my response to that is there's a lot of work that we can do while we're waiting to get the traffic signal equipment. So let's keep moving forward. So he has sent the plans out to, I believe, 4 contractors to get quotes to do the work. So they're waiting to get those quotes back, and we're hopeful that work will start this year, in this construction season. So they can do the box, what we call the box widening, the widening of the roadway, and get the roadway ready for the traffic signals. It seems, based on the timeline he's giving us, the traffic signals probably won't go up until, I'll say late winter, early spring. But it would be nice to see some of the roadway widening get done, additional lane widths, turning lanes as well installed, which that in itself may provide some relief. So that's where we are today. And again, we have limited ability to basically dictate the schedule of the project, but we can only work with AD Makepeace, and I can say they have been working very closely with us to move forward, and that we're going to continue doing that. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Sure. Yeah, Ms. Allen?
Can you tell us where you're at with the lowering the speed limit? Has that been approved by the state?
Okay, I can answer that, or I'll actually probably ask James to, but I know that, I'll try to answer that. I believe it has been approved. James, we still have to go back to the BOS for approval, or we still have to go back to the Board of Selectmen for approval. It is something right now, James and I are handling a lot of the major projects and a lot of the roadway work that's ongoing. We're hopeful. We're in the process of hiring a town engineer, and it's going to be one of the priorities that we're going to hand to the town engineer once hired. But we're right now in the process of hiring a town engineer, and it looks like we may have a candidate soon. So that will be a priority that we will hand over to that person, amongst many other priorities, but that is one that I know you've been waiting patiently for.
And can I ask? Bourne Road has a lot of traffic, and the line of sight is very poor for the feeder streets. But I understand that the heavy equipment trucks are not allowed to use Halfway Pond to Wareham Road. And why is that? Why is the burden all on Bourne Road?
I would have to check. So you're saying there's a truck exclusion on Halfway Pond Road?
Well, the end of Halfway Pond that goes into Wareham Road, coming out of Red Brook.
Okay.
So they exit Red Brook from River Run Road and not Wareham or Halfway Pond Road.
I can look into that. I don't know, James, do you have any, is there a truck exclusion? Or we-
I can speak a little bit about that. James Downey, Assistant DPW Director. So there is no formal truck exclusion, but I think through the review and the permitting of the Red Brook, I think it was decided through working with the town that they were going to be promoting their trucks to utilize that over the Wareham Road. And that's where the River Runway and the improvements to the intersection of Halfway and Bourne Road, they paid for that towards that purpose.
So Bourne Road is always going to be the major road for heavy equipment?
When you compare it to Wareham Road, probably yes.
Mr. Delafield, did you have a question?
Yeah, follow up on that a little bit, but also in Precinct 16 where I am, of course, the major concern is while this work is going on, not only is there the Wareham Road, which is still a dirt road after all up there, but also you have Herring Way. Those people are all concerned about people trying to do shortcuts during all of this, or on the West Long Pond Road. These are areas where the people in my community are terribly concerned about what's going to happen. What sorts of plans and how can we be part of that and ensure that that traffic does not overload the dirt roads in our area, which are not equipped for that at all? And people are, by the way, already using them too often, so it's already a problem.
Sure, I can say it's obviously difficult for us to dictate, the direction where people go and which roads they use. Certainly we can think about if there are any options, and we're open to any suggestions, but, it is difficult when, especially when people use GPS units to determine which way they're going to go if they're not familiar with the area, and, but that, it is a difficult thing for us to control, but we're open to suggestions if we have any.
Well, I would say, first of all, the thing is that we need to have very clear directions as to how to keep the traffic flowing while this is going on. I mean, I can tell you, I go to Red Brook all the time, just to the gym down there. At 8 o'clock in the morning, it can be backed up beyond Justine, sometime almost to Bourne Road. And if you have that sort of backup, people are not going to follow the routes that are set up to deal with them. I think the town has a responsibility for those roads that are not equipped to do it. How are we
Sure.
going to make that work?
Well, I'm happy to look into that. I mean, certainly tonight, we had certain items on the agenda, but anything that you bring up, if we don't have an answer for you tonight, we'll make note of it and we can look into it.
And just as a final to that, as the precinct chair in that area, I would appreciate anything you can do to keep me fully informed. So this is an area which I will take a lot of flack for.
Okay.
I can guarantee it. And rightfully, it's something that our community is terribly concerned
Do
about.
you have anything you want to add to that?
I would just say, when it comes to the construction of the intersection, we would be involved with Red Brook and the consultant to make sure that we try to minimize those traffic delays, but at the same point, there'll be inevitably some delay in order to work towards improving the intersection. But we would work with them as far as, and with, traffic details, police officers, to handle the traffic the best we can.
I need to be part of that all the way through, if you don't mind.
I have Mr. LaFrere and then Mr. Hutchinson.
Yes, I think these roads here you've selected, these 3 roads are good roads to begin with. Do you have a long-term plan? Do you have other roads in the plan? What's next?
Are you referring to for traffic signals or for resurfacing?
Any kind of mitigation.
For traffic mitigation?
Yeah, any types of mitigation to other roads that experiencing high traffic, excessive traffic, unnecessary traffic?
I mean, some of the concerns that we've received is more so been related recently to speed, necessarily speeding, but excessive speed. And so we've looked at different areas where we're looking at cautionary speed limit signs where you can potentially reduce the speed in some areas down, in some cases on sharp curves, down to 20 miles per hour, putting in chevron arrows to highlight the fact that there's a curve. Long-term planning, certainly is something we could work with the regional planning agency and with the planning board if there's anything else. But in terms of traffic mitigation, right now the priority is Long Pond Road and Halfway Pond Road, and then these other areas where we've received some feedback from the public on trying to make some improvements to slow the traffic down. And we are doing that.
Thank you.
Mr. Hutchinson.
I'm a representative from Precinct 17, and we know James very well. Yep. Yeah, he's been down working with us on South Wareham Road weekly, it feels like, and we appreciate the effort. But I'd like to underscore Pompey's and Carmen's requests for a plan for all three of those roads: South Wareham Road, Bourne Road, and the Halfway Pond and Long Pond corridor. I mean, all three of those roads need traffic planning, and luckily we do have the chair of the planning board here, and it needs a plan. And I agree with you about the regional planning agency, and we've talked with James about that, and it would be a great idea to actually get it underway if we can. So I'm not sure whether Steve invokes that as a task, or whether you do, or how that works.
Well, through the chair, it's something we can look into, whether or not there's a corridor study. You can look at, define certain areas of where you want to study the traffic patterns and other options to either try to divert traffic away from that area, but obviously if you move traffic from one area, it goes to another area, so you have to look at what the impacts are as a whole. But we can reach out to the regional planning agency to see if there's something they could assist us with.
It's only going to get worse because of the bridge construction for the Sagamore Bridge. And, that keeps creeping up on us for, it might be 7 years down the pike now. But all the overflow from Route 3 is going to get squeezed up into these crossover roads. So,
Right.
A plan is critical. Thanks.
So as much as we could keep traffic on main roads, that would be our preference, so we'll see what we can do.
For sure.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Williams.
Yeah, I am looking at the traffic from a somewhat different perspective. I think it's inevitable that Plymouth is going to be growing. I think even in Cedarville, the traffic is pretty bad now. I think it's time that Plymouth started talking seriously about a Plymouth-wide traffic study. And I know that's expensive. I know the budgetary constrictions are great. But by the time some of the things of these plans get implemented, it's almost too late. So my experience in a fast-growing town in Pennsylvania was we were proactive, and it paid off big time. If not for just the simplest reason that the construction costs are going to go up. And I think the congestion is definitely going up, even in my tenure here in Plymouth. So I wish that someone would take the lead on that, get involved with a good planner, get the state involved, because that's what we had to do. We had to bring all of these very diverse groups together and make a plan, and we had a plan, and it worked. So it is doable, and I think that the money will be well spent for the long term.
Sure, and we can look into that. I will say that, I think it was mentioned earlier, the Herring Pond Road intersection at State Road is something that we've been working with the state on and with the Regional Planning Agency. And I believe we've received Project Review Committee approval through Mass Highway for that project. It is going to take several years to implement between the design process and construction, but it is a major project that we've been pushing. So I appreciate your comments, looking at town-wide, and just want to let you know that we are also focusing on some of the major problem areas that we have currently. But trying to look ahead is a good point.
Yeah, I think so, and the difference between what's going on now, which is, the budget limitations fault, and going to a region-wide, Plymouth is regional, I say, study is huge. You look at the whole town rather than just the place that's giving you the most problems that day, and it makes a big difference, and I'm sure you're aware of that, but
Right, I can tell you,
hopefully there's some money out there that can help alleviate the cost of this, because planning is indispensable, especially for a town that's growing as fast as Plymouth is. And I know you know that.
Yeah,
so.
we can take that back and look to see what their options are. I know typically you'll focus on corridor studies and how to improve a corridor. Well, obviously Plymouth has many corridors of traffic, so it is a pretty significant study, but we can take a look at that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from the committee or anyone online? Not seeing any. I thank you guys for coming in and taking the time, Mr. Coyle.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And feel free to email us if you have any questions after.
Yeah, and you've always been very responsive. I know I've talked to Mr. Downey plenty of times, and thank you, Mr. Brindisi, for coming in and giving us an update on that. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Excuse me, and my mic was off. Next up, we have Mr. Bolton here to speak kind of on two subjects that kind of almost puzzle piece together here, I think. So we have the land bank presentation and the master plan debrief. And before Mr. Bolton speaks, you did get the Plymouth Land Bank packet that came in, the email package. We did get today, and this is basically fresh, hot off the presses from last night. We did get this morning from Mr. Bolton the master plan debrief. I don't know who's had a moment to look at it, but that was emailed out to you all this morning. But anyways, Mr. Bolton, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. For the record, Steve Bolton, Chair of the Plymouth Planning Board and Chair of the Master Plan Committee. I'll start very quickly with the Master Plan Committee. You do have in your packets the presentation that was given last night to the committee by the consultant. The presentation essentially is a summary of information obtained from the kickoff event that we had and subsequent survey responses that have been coming in through the town's website. I've distributed to all of you a copy of the card that is being printed up by the consultants, and that will be distributed out as well at various locations and events, encouraging people to take the survey that's online.
I just stop you for, that was the biggest thing that did actually stick out to me in the presentation, is that I think other than the people in the room for that kickoff meeting, there's encourage your neighbors. There's only been about 53 responses to that.
That's correct, and we need to start getting that out there. And it's the first of multiple surveys. It's not the only survey that we'll be doing, it's not the only, but it's the basis that they're using in order to identify the issues. That's step one, is identify the issues in town. And I don't think it's a particularly big surprise as to what those issues are and where the focuses are. There's several major themes that seem to come through, and they come through every year in every instance, and we'll move on to the next section when we talk to the land bank, because that's part of it. But the goal of the consultants right now is to learn. They're learning about Plymouth, learning about our issues, learning about our circumstances. One of the areas, Mr. Williams, is transportation, and transportation includes traffic. We are a car-based community, and nothing is really going to change that in the immediate future. Mr. Hutchinson is right on top of the transportation aspects. He is the constant drumbeater within the committee to make sure that transportation does not get short shrift as part of our master plan. But I encourage you specifically to make that suggestion as one of the suggestions that Plymouth needs a town-wide transportation/traffic study, a study that essentially says we need to understand where cars are going, where they're going now, where they're going to go in the future, and how do we address that? Because that's a great action item to put as part of a master plan, because Mr. Williams is absolutely correct. We're going to see a lot of changes, especially as we end up with bridge work and other new developments that may come to Plymouth. Obviously, the woodlot is always a concern, and the potential traffic, well, I will say nightmare that would potentially create. So I absolutely encourage all of you to please go to your precincts, go to everyone, and tell all of your town meeting members to go to their constituents and get them involved. We will, as a committee, be meeting in a lot of other places. Our goal is to try and capitalize on other events that are occurring and appear there. Our consultants are doing the exact same things, plus we are starting to come for our fall schedule as to some larger events, more listening sessions with the consultants. We're not doing as many in the summer. In the summer, the consultants are basically going to where the people are because it's summer and people don't want to come to meetings, and I don't blame them. So that's the quick update in terms of the master plan. We're active, we're engaged. Our consultants have been doing a lot of studying, and now they're starting the community outreach in earnest. And we encourage everyone to please participate in the survey, encourage others to participate in the survey, because once we have that information, part of it is it helps us reach out further as we learn more information and greater challenges. So, moving to the next item, the land bank. And I'll make it clear, I am not speaking as a member of the planning board or the master plan committee in that. Right now, the land bank, the proposed article for fall town meeting is coming through the planning department. The planning board will be considering it. It may adopt it itself, but that has yet to happen. So right now, I'm speaking just as a concerned citizen who has presented this through the planning department and it as an article for the fall. Wherever I travel in town, people tend to ask for three things. They want open space to preserve our aquifer. They want affordable housing because housing has become unaffordable. And they don't want to pay more in taxes to do it. And they ask me, what am I going to do about that? Well, I've been thinking about it. Others have been thinking about it. And what have we come up with? The idea is the land bank. The land bank is intended to address these three potentially critical issues. So the purpose of the land bank is to purchase land and pay into projects that will benefit those three areas, specifically open space, primarily for aquifer protection, but also for all other uses, genuinely affordable housing, and I'll talk a little bit more about that word genuinely, and future municipal facilities. That's the tax aspect. When we talk about open space for aquifer protection, it comes as no surprise. We're a sole source aquifer. If our aquifer is polluted, this town is in major, major trouble. We need to make sure that does not happen. The best way that we can do that is to preserve those open areas that serve as the filter for our aquifer. There are areas that we can develop in town that make sense, where we have infrastructure. There are areas where we should not be developing. And we need to preserve those areas and protect those areas. The only way that we can guarantee to do that is to own the land. If you don't own the land, somebody else does, and somebody else can do what they can legally do. So we need to do that. That's part of it. Affordable housing. When we talk about affordable housing here in Plymouth, the general approach to that has been, we don't do it, 40Bs do it. And 40Bs are not affordable housing. 80% area median income is an absurdity. for Plymouth. We fall within the Boston, Cambridge region. A family of 4 is deemed to have an area median income of $147,000. So an affordable property for a family of 4 would be based on 30% of 80% of that. Just think about that number. 30% of 80% of that. It's an outrageous number. It essentially means that you're going to be spending the equivalent of close to $50,000 a year on housing alone. That's deemed affordable. It's not. So the goal of the land bank is to fund projects, is to create land, is to purchase land and fund projects that provide housing at no greater than an average of 60% area median income, AMI. And why 60%? It's the number that makes sense for what is generally termed on, I don't care for the phrase, but it's the phrase that's used, workforce housing. But it's not workforce anymore. It's our young people who are starting out in professions and good-paying jobs, still can't afford to live here. And it's seniors who have some measure of income still. I describe it as the too rich to be poor and the too poor to be rich. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sure that we create housing at all levels for Plymouth. And Plymouth right now is creating housing at one level, the high end. So the goal is to try and create funding for medium and lower income. Finally, future municipal facilities. Wouldn't it be great if, as we sit here and know that we're going to need to expand a school or a fire station or another facility, and the property next to it becomes available, we could go, gee, wouldn't it make sense to buy it now while it's available at its current price, even though we don't need it now, but potentially we'll need it 5 years, 10 years from now? Because what happens 5 years or 10 years from now if we don't own it? Well, it may be developed. We can't build on it. It may be that the price has gone up extraordinarily. It's unaffordable. And if we can't buy it, then instead of expanding an existing facility, what are we going to have to do? We're probably going to have to build a new one. So the goal, again, is to use monies that we have now to purchase things that we will need in the future to save us more money in the future. Those are the 3 set purposes that we've created for this particular land bank. And that makes this land bank unique in the country. Land banks are nothing new. They've been around for quite a while. Massachusetts has had its first land bank was created in 1983 on Nantucket. But that land bank is solely for open space purposes. And I can tell you what the land bank in Nantucket does is as soon as property comes available, they buy it. They have the money. That's not a problem. They buy it. And they buy it as a means to exclude development, including affordable housing, particularly the interior of Nantucket. The open edges on the water, nobody's worried about the land bank purchasing those. Those are going to very wealthy people. But those interior spaces, when those become available, the land bank snaps those up so nobody can develop them. That's not our purpose here. Our purpose here is to try and create a unique land bank that meets the needs of Plymouth. And we've chosen these 3 for very specific reasons. A, they are needs. B, they will help the residents. And C, it is the kind of thing that might get through the state. That's important because adopting a land bank requires state approval. And the state will not approve anything right now that they consider to be anti-housing. We've all heard about it. It's 40B. It's the MBTA communities law. They want housing, 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 and more housing. If they had a choice, they would basically say to Plymouth, build houses on everything that you have. No more open space, all houses. Well, that's not going to work for us. But we can't stop them, except if we own the land. So that's the goal. So, the funding source. This is the one that always gets people. The proposal is a 2% transfer fee on all property paid by the buyer. It's a similar methodology to the land banks that are being used, so that we have two existing land banks in Massachusetts, Nantucket and the Vineyard. Those are both funded the same way. Why the buyer? Well, I describe it this way. Plymouth is a club. We're all members of that club, and we pay our dues. Our dues are in the form of taxes. And we've been funding those dues for quite a while, some more than others, and some longer than others, but we all pay in. And for those dues, we have been maintaining systems and paying in to try and keep our community the way it is. As new people come in, we're asking for an initiation fee. That's what this is. This is the initiation fee. If you want the benefits of Plymouth, we're asking you to buy into Plymouth. Now, that's being opposed by realtors primarily. Realtors have opposed this, and I've met with realtors, and they say, we really love this land bank, we think it's a great idea, however, we can't support anything that's paid for by a transfer fee. And I understand it. It's not fun, it's not great, no one wants to pay more money for anything. But I ask the next question, okay, so where does the money come from? And nobody's been able to give me another answer to that. So what we've done is we've set a 2% transfer fee, but there are many exemptions to this, and the exemptions are very important. First, we're going to start with the basics. Housing costing under a certain amount. What's that amount? That amount is determined by the Land Bank Commission, the group of people who will be running our land bank. They make that determination based upon market conditions. In the legislation, in the draft that you'll see, there's a number in there, $350,000. That's the floor. What we're saying is it can't go less than that, but it doesn't mean it can't be higher. The Land Bank Commission, on the first day that it meets and is created, sits down and says, okay, what's the number? And they're going to look at the real estate market, and they're going to come up with that number. And that number could be $450,000, $550,000, $650,000, whatever number they believe is appropriate, so that we're not pricing out the people who really can't afford it, but at the same time are able to generate revenue from those who can. Also exempt anything that's defined as affordable housing. And affordable housing is anything that meets any state or federal affordable housing program. So that's that 80% AMI number. However, I want to make it clear, for the land bank's purposes, if the land bank is going to contribute to an affordable housing program, the land bank defines it as 60% AMI. So, and that's a 60% average. So if you're building 4 units, the average AMI for those 4 units has to be 60%. So they could have a market rate, they could have, and then 3 30% lower rates. They can do whatever they need to do to balance it out, but it has to average out at 60% AMI or less. A good example, again, would have been the Grantham project. That would have averaged out at under 60% AMI because the majority of the units were 60% or less. Those types of programs. And that's something that the land bank can do. The land bank could be the one who provides the land for it because they've purchased property that makes sense for affordable housing. Or they could be the ones who are providing some of the funding. This is the way the CPC provided funding. Another exemption, obviously, charitable and nonprofits, they're exempt. Just the way they are exempt from our property taxes, they're exempt from the fee. We're not out to make it more difficult for people who are doing nonprofit and charitable work to do their work. First-time home buyers, exempt. You fall under a federal or state first-time home buyer program, you are exempt. However, we made something a little bit different here. We required that everybody on the deed qualify as a first-time home buyer. A lot of the programs just simply say that one person must be a first-time home buyer. We've said, no, everybody must be a first-time. We're trying to avoid that straw man proposal where you've got, oh, gee, yeah, I've been flipping homes for years, but here it is, I'm just going to have this one person put their name on the deed, and they'll be the owner. No, that's going to get caught. And then a final one, Plymouth residents buying and selling within a certain period of time. If you're a Plymouth resident, if you own a home and you sell your home, and you buy another home within 8 months in Plymouth, you'll be exempt from that fee. Because again, what we're trying to say is, you've already been paying your dues. We don't need another initiation fee from you. We want to make sure that we are able for Plymouth residents to stay in Plymouth. That means seniors downsizing or young people upsizing. We want people to be able to stay in Plymouth, so we're exempting them from that fee as well. So those are some of the key examples. So again, I want to make it crystal clear because people get very upset. This is another tax on me, this is, no. No current resident of Plymouth will pay anything towards the land bank unless they are buying an investment property here in Plymouth. If you're buying a residence, you will not pay a fee. That's the way it's written. So, who decides? Who is this Land Bank Commission? The commission is created, we have a 9-person commission appointed as follows. And I have the Select Board, 2 appointees. Town Meeting through COPC, 2 appointees. Planning Board, 2 appointees. The Affordable Housing Trust, 1 appointee. The Open Space Committee, 1 appointee. The Land Use Acquisition Committee, LUAC, 1 appointee. Why those people? These are the town bodies who are literally charged with the 3 things that we talked about: open space, affordable housing, and our municipal facilities. That's why these bodies were chosen. So, why are they appointed rather than elected? Because they are elected on the Vineyard and Nantucket. And we talked about this. And Mr. Canty was intimately involved in this particular discussion. And he raised some very, very good points, and we came to an ultimate conclusion to appoint. And we found a few reasons. First, we want all eligible persons to be considered for this. And eligible persons are very important. So when those bodies appoint someone, there's 2 major restrictions. 1, they can't appoint anybody from themselves, not their own body. And 2, they cannot appoint any elected officials. And we've done that for a very conscious reason. We want people to we want this to be a truly independent body. I don't want anybody to have to go back to the body that they're sitting on, that they've been appointed by, and answer to them and feel that they have to answer to them. Once you're appointed, you're appointed. You're going to make the best decisions. I don't want somebody who is appointed from open space to get criticized when they turn around and say, we decided against purchasing this one particular open space parcel. I don't want somebody who's for affordable housing to be criticized saying, we decided not to fund, we thought this was not a good affordable housing proposal. They're appointed so that they can be as independent as possible. And we want to make sure that the best people can step forward and do this without having to worry about a lack of funding or inexperience in running a campaign. Because for those who've done it, I can tell you, running a town-wide campaign is a significant challenge. It's not for the faint of heart, and it's becoming more and more expensive. And we don't want either the political aspects or the financial aspects impacting something as important as how we spend significant funds on these particular projects. And that gets us to the other point. We want to make sure that outside influencers are not put in. These bodies will appoint people the same way that we appoint everyone else, in an open, public process. And that's called for specifically in the legislation. Must be an open process and subject to the open meeting law. So everybody knows who's getting appointed, whose qualifications are being put forward, and why. Finally, we also wanted to make sure that all of the voices relating to these types of issues are heard. I don't want it to be a circumstance in which everybody on the Land Bank Commission is focused on just affordable housing or open space or municipal facilities. I want to make sure that every one of those issues has its proponent. And the only way that we can do that is by making sure that the bodies responsible for doing that are appointing people who they know will be carrying out those issues. Otherwise, again, imagine the horrible circumstance if, let's just say hypothetically, a group of people decided to get together and fund candidate after candidate after candidate for the Land Bank Commission and eventually control the Land Bank Commission and where its money is spent. And this is significant money we're talking about. Just as an example, based on last year's retail sales of homes, just so not raw land, not developers purchasing, no, just home sales, this would have generated over $7 million in revenue for the Land Bank Commission. That's a sizable chunk of money. So that's why we really focused on these particular groups and this particular methodology. So let's talk a little bit about the flexibility of the land bank. Why a land bank versus anything else? First of all, this is not replacing the CPC. Both Nantucket and the Vineyard have both CPC and a land bank. This does not replace that. This supplements it. This gives another source of funds. I know Mr. Cohan recently stood at this lectern and made the statement, the CPC does not and will not have sufficient funds to do all the things the town wants it to do. And that comes from our tax dollars. And as I said, everybody tells me, I want all of this, but do not raise my taxes to do it. I am barely hanging on. You're going to price me out of Plymouth. So what are we doing? We're making sure that the CPC or the Affordable Housing Trust or the town or anybody else who has a great idea regarding open space, affordable housing, or future municipal use has a place to go and say, hey, look, I've got this idea. I'm trying to put together a pool of money. I'm trying to put together resources. Will the land bank participate? And subject to their requirements, the commission will make that decision. They have greater flexibility because they don't have some of the restrictions that the CPC has. They don't have to spend their money in certain percentages. They can simply say, you know what, we're holding out because we know that there's a big parcel coming up. Think Holtec land. If we have the money, we can buy the land. That's going to be a big issue if and when that comes up. And that's not the only major parcel. So we look at that. Think about affordable housing projects. Wouldn't it be wonderful if 5 more Grantham-style groups came forward and said, I have a program for veterans housing. I have a program for disabled housing. I have a program for young people and first-time homebuyer programs. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could fund all of those? This is an opportunity to do this. So it also creates a little bit more flexibility in terms of the fee. As I've said, they make the decision. Right now, it's called for a 2%. It can drop to 1%. They have that flexibility. It can be as low as 1 and as high as 2. They can't eliminate it, and they can't send it through the roof, but they can adjust it. And they make the determination as to what that floor is regarding values. Imagine a circumstance, I can envision one, imagine a circumstance in which the real estate market tanks. It's cyclical, it happens. And we go, oh my God, this could be a hindrance. Well, we'll drop it to a 1% fee, and we'll raise that floor up to $1 million. So now, only mansions are being taxed, as it were. They're the only ones paying. And then, when the markets rebound, they can lower it and raise the fee again. It's a greater flexibility than we're allowed in a lot of other ways. Because otherwise, we're constantly going back to the state for approval for things. This gives us a lot more flexibility. Ultimately, that's the issue. We're trying to create a flexible body that can generate funds that will not tax further the residents of Plymouth in order to accomplish some of the significant goals that we'd like to achieve. So with that, any questions?
Okay. I'm sure that I saw out of the corner of my eye, I'm sorry, could everyone raise their hand again? That was very quick. You were all quick to put up, but quick to take down. Okay, so I've got a couple down here. I guess before I get to Mr. Williams and Mr. LaFrari, just a clarification for me. I think you talk about the appointing authority in like section 3 or something like
Yeah.
that. But just for clarity's sake, it talks about the appointing authority if they represent a larger body so when you're looking for town meeting,
That's right.
but it's through COPC, but they can't be town meeting members?
Cannot be town meeting members, no.
Okay. Okay, well.
And I understand that.
Yeah.
And
No,
that was
yeah.
something we discussed significantly, but.
I just wanted to make that clear.
No, that's absolutely there. And
Because it seems confusing, the wording to me, town meeting through the COPC. It seems like you're asking for town meeting members, but yet the definition is you. So I was a little, layman's speak, I was a little confused with the legalese that was in the.
The reason it was
section
done
3.
that way was because if we had just put town meeting there.
Yeah.
Then town meeting would have
Have
to
to-
figure out a way to
Sure.
appoint somebody, and
Okay.
that would then be at town meeting, and
Okay.
that'd be a major, versus having the body that is representative of town meeting do the appointing.
Well, I thank you for the explanation of that. I was just confused on that one. So, Mr. Williams.
Yeah, Steve, I have 3 what I would consider rhetorical questions now. Number 1, are you reasonably certain that the state won't see through this as a land grab opportunity and not approve it? If that happens, you've wasted a lot of time. Number 2, the situation in town is such that I'm not sure that you will get a lot of interested candidates based on people being let go in the near past. And number 3, in section 6, there's a whole list of things, maintenance and improvements to real property. And they involve removal or destruction of trees is not going to be permitted. Sand removal is not going to be permitted. And the motorized vehicles that we all know that inhabit Miles Standish are not going to happen. And this is going to involve manpower, it's going to involve expense. It's never been done before in Plymouth, to my knowledge, that these things are treated seriously as incursions in the bylaws. And I'm wondering how you're going to do that. Those are my questions. I don't need answers now, but I'm going to ask them again.
Well, I
in the
can actually,
future.
I can give you responses that, I don't consider those rhetorical questions. Those are very legitimate questions. With respect to the state, there is a reason that, again, as I said, we put in the affordable housing component to make it clear, this is not a land grab. This is as much a housing act as it is anything else. Now, the state, the governor proposed a 2% transfer fee to allow municipalities to adopt that and have the money just go and disappear into the general fund. The legislature didn't approve that. But it's there. It's an idea. And this is different. And Plymouth has an argument, different than other places. As a sole source aquifer town, we have a basis for making the same arguments that Nantucket and the Vineyard made, which was, we need this, and we can't otherwise afford to do it. And if you want more housing here, and we are willing to do that, we're going to fund it. If you want more housing, we need to make sure the resources are there to support that.
Are you going to ask them to change their law that's written so that we can't do affordable housing? That it's really hard to do? It's coming down from the state level that's making this difficult.
That's a different animal. I
It's
can
the
ask them to
state-
change
it's the
40B
state
until
again.
I'm blue in the face. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. They've made it clear. They want more housing, not less. Asking them to change anything is not going to. That's why we're going this route, because this would be a new law. This is a home rule petition. We create the law for Plymouth. This is a unique body. We have taken sections and ideas from land banks throughout the country. If you look at the National Association of Realtors summary of land banks, all of those refer to blighted properties in inner city. That's what they focus on. Obviously, here in Massachusetts, we focus on open space. If you go out west, you're looking at waterways, trailways. In other towns, you are looking at the idea of creating opportunities for future municipal buildings. We've combined all of those in one. That's a very unique thing. And I can tell you, I've spoken to a number of state reps, our own and others, and they find this very intriguing. This could be the model for somebody else. But as for whether the state will approve or not, I don't know. I only know if we don't ask, we'll never find out. Regarding your second point about people being interested and involved, I think when you have an opportunity to truly shape Plymouth, I think that this is a position people will compete for. I think people will give up other positions to do this, because this is one of those positions in town that you're not advisory to anything. You're making substantive decisions. You are going to be one of 9 making major decisions that will shape the town. I think you'll find a lot of people who find that interesting and intriguing. Honestly, I know I do.
I'm not sure that past history bears that out.
We don't have one of these. There is no past history.
For town volunteers to be given that much responsibility and then kept.
I don't want to get hung up on this because, I think this is good for kind of some of the broader questions with what's in front of us. I think those questions are more for when this becomes an article or something, some sort of debate on town hall. It's a very good point, and I totally understand what you're getting at, Mr. Williams. But if you want to go on to Mr. Williams' third question, I think.
His third question had to do with managing and maintaining the properties. And in terms of sand and gravel removal and things like that, well, the town does enforce it. But one of the things is the money that the Land Bank Commission has can be used to enforce it. They have their own rights. They are the equivalent of a private property owner. They can enforce it too.
I think, if you'd want to stick around, I think you're the next topic immediately after you might beg to differ regarding that answer. But Mr. LaFrari, and then I had Mrs. Adelman next.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bulletin, for the information you shared. I have a real generic question. I haven't gone through with a fine-tooth comb on this act yet, but earlier you said the purpose of the land bank is to meet critical needs of the town, and you listed open space for aquifer protection, genuinely affordable housing, future municipal needs. So my question is, what happens if the town needs change? Will the land bank be structured or organized to adapt to these needs and review these needs on a regular basis? Well, these are, again, this is special legislation, so no, this is not something that we're allowed to just change randomly as needs. But these are needs that are always going to be there. We're always going to need to preserve our open space. We're always going to need affordable housing, and we're always going to need municipal facilities. And we can always, and again, look, would I love a world in which we have now purchased up all of the open space and the remainder of our issue is we now need to just spend it all on municipal facilities and affordable housing? Sure, that's a wonderful world. And if we get there if this land bank becomes superfluous because we have more money than we know what to do with, I think that would be a great world. If we ever get to that point, I'm perfectly happy to see the land bank go away. I don't think that'll ever happen. We'll always have a need. We can always change the revenue. Again, that's part of it. We can always reduce the revenue if we don't need as much money. I don't think that's a circumstance we're ever going to worry about. But what we don't want to have happen is we don't want to have this become a cash grab either, where everybody wants their hands in this pie, and it's going to be used for, well, all of a sudden it's, oh, well, now we could put in a pier, or now we can go ahead and build something new, or we want to create our convention center. And we say, no, that's just not it. The state won't approve that, and that's why we focused on these particular areas. Thank you.
Mrs. Allen.
I have 2 points. I know the 15 towns of Cape Cod formed a land trust before the CPC was created, and they were very successful. I think the goal was, and I think they reached that goal, for every developed parcel, they would buy an open space parcel. And then when CPC came along, they dropped the land bank because the CPC had matching funds. So why do you think Plymouth would be different to have both the CPC and a land bank?
Well, the Cape Land Bank was different because it was funded by tax dollars. It was funded the way the CPC is funded, by a
3%,
percentage.
yeah.
Yes. And then there was a match. So they were never able to get a land bank funded by a land transfer. That was opposed by realtors, and it was killed year after year after year. In fact, the legislator who created the land banks on the islands lived on the Cape and continued to fight that many years until he unfortunately ended up leaving and then passing away before that was done. The reason that the Cape Land Bank ultimately disappeared was because the CPC was created, and the towns of the Cape all said, well, I don't want my money going to buy open space out on the outer Cape if I live in Osterville or Hyannis. A lot of the money was coming from the towns in those areas and was then being spent on the outer Cape. And there was a lot of conflict over that. Plymouth is different from these other land banks because we are a single town. It's not like the Vineyard or Nantucket, in which there are literally multiple towns that each have representatives on that. We are one town making decisions for one town. So that's why we're different, and that's why I think it focuses differently.
My other point was, you talk about the flexibility of the commission, but I am concerned about the power of the commission because there's no checking. They can buy land without town meeting approval. So who is watching over this commission that's appointed, not elected?
Well, again, the fact that they're appointed means that they can be removed. Try and remove an elected official. It's next to impossible. An appointed official who's violating the rules can be removed and removed easily, if that's the case. In terms of who's watching them, you have 6 separate appointing bodies. All of them are watching because they have somebody there. They're all talking about what's happening. It also has to be an open process. There's nothing secretive about it. Everything has to follow the open meeting rules. Everyone will be watching it. They have requirements for providing a budget, providing an update, providing status reports. With respect to conservation land, they have to actually report to the state. So the state oversees this to some degree. They're looking at the finances. They're looking at that. The town is looking at who's doing what.
Mr. Brewster? And then, I'm sorry. Okay.
Dale.
Dale, yeah.
Thank you for presenting. Just a caveat on that, is there term limits on these appointees?
We did not put term limits on appointees, and we discussed that. And it's, again, this is still subject to change.
Yeah.
If there's additional thoughts on these things, we can certainly talk about it. This is not a final locked document, and I tried to make that clear elsewhere, and I'll make it clear again tonight. We will be locking it down soon, but we are presenting this to people for that reason. We talked about that, but again, one of the other concerns ultimately was, to Mr. Williams' point, if you've got somebody who's doing a good job, we don't necessarily want to say you can't do that. But as an appointed body, they have the opportunity to do the turnover. If we create term limits, the concern that you ultimately have is what happens if you don't have somebody who you feel is capable and qualified. It's a balancing act. If we had elected positions, I would certainly insist on term limits, because you don't want somebody to turn this into a career. But at the same time, this is a volunteer position, and so we do respect the fact that we have lots of people who volunteer and volunteer for longer periods of time.
So just to follow up on that, on the flip side, if, you're saying if you have somebody who's doing a great job, why take them out? If the town feels that they're not doing a great job, or that they're not going in the direction the town wants, what mode do they have to
They don't get
fix it?
They don't get reappointed. They're appointed.
Okay, so there's appointment every,
It's a 3-year term.
okay, that's what I was trying to get.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, no, it's a 3-year term. This is not indefinite. And it's a staggered term, the way we do all of those things.
Yeah.
So if you're not doing a good job, you don't get reappointed.
Right. Mr. Weber?
Thank you, Dale Weber, Precinct 3. Steve, I missed your opening remark, this is a planning board document?
Right now, it's the planning department. And it's not their document. This document was created by a group of people, Mr. Canty, myself, Mr. Golden, Mr. Helm, in consultation with Mr. Hartman, in consultation with several others, as an idea. Basically, all of us, at that point representing Mr. Golden, at that point represented this body, Mr. Canty, Mr. Helm from the Select Board, myself from the Planning Board. We got together because we heard those cries. We heard those, how do we do these things? And we said, let's come up with a way to do it. Let's come up with an idea. And that's what we did.
So who formed that think tank?
I think it formed somewhat organically. Other people were invited and chose not to participate.
So who will be sponsoring this at the October town meeting?
Right now, it would be a planning department article, but it may be sponsored by the planning board. I have to bring it to the planning board and see if the planning board wants to sponsor it. I haven't done that yet. It's still because we want to try and finalize it and make that determination and lock everything down. And I'll defer to Mr. Canty as well if.
Mr. Canty,
So
welcome.
if they didn't, the select board, I'm sure, would. It's a fiscal year '24, and I anticipate would again be a fiscal year '25 goal of the select board to establish a land bank in the town of Plymouth. So if the planning board doesn't, the select board will.
So we've talked tonight about volunteers and how to get volunteers and whether or not volunteers would come in. This whole group that sponsored this, some of which are no longer here already, right? Some of them are gone. You mentioned Harry Allen. You mentioned David Golden. He's moved on from where this committee was appointed, but this never came before this committee. All I'm questioning is the development of the criteria for exemptions. There have been many committees in this town, including this committee in the past, that looked at things like, let's look at the charitable and nonprofit organizations in town, which last time I looked was over 75 charitable organizations that bring in a ton of money. How did you develop these exemptions?
Most of the exemptions came from the existing land banks. So again, most of what you see in here has already been approved by the state. That's part of the issue. We didn't want to create something that the state would go, we've never seen or heard of anything like this before, we're going to ignore it. We created most of these exemptions based upon existing exemptions in the land banks
So
here.
this is somewhat of a boilerplate. It's not a Plymouth-specific document.
Oh, no, there's a lot in here that's very, again, anything having to do with municipal, with affordable housing, that's Plymouth-specific. That was never done before. The exemption of Plymouth to Plymouth transfers, that's never been done before. So there's a lot of stuff. We certainly took a lot of the legalese, and the jargon, and the operational materials from the existing land banks, because we didn't want, A, to run afoul legally. We wanted to know that this was something the state has already approved before legally, and B, it's something that the state has seen before and can't turn around and go, well, this is completely unheard of. We go, no, 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 you've already approved this. This has been around for over 40 years.
All right, so my final question is through you, Mr. Chair, is when you say that right now this is going to be funded by 2% from the seller contribution, but that if things work out, you can change that. Are you saying that there is existing home rule petitions out there that allow the community to change the format that you set in for initial approval?
No, when I said we can change it, I meant it can be changed because it's in the legislation. It's in our proposal. It's in our land bank legislation that says the land bank commission can decide between 1% and 2%. The land bank commission can decide the amount that we've just set the floor. And yes, those are things that are in the existing land banks.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Mr. LaFerry has a question for you.
Mr. Bolton, did you say this was already approved by the state? No, no, no.
Oh,
What I
okay.
said was that there are 2 existing land banks that have, in part, similar language already approved by the state. So, for example, all of the language that talks about how funds are managed, how they're invested, who's responsible for overseeing how the accounting is done. All of that was taken because I wanted to make sure, and we all did, that we wanted to make sure that we weren't running afoul of any laws. So we went and we took the current version of those land banks as they've been updated to make sure that we're looking at the most recent thing that the state has approved.
So this is draft form, right?
This is draft form. We'll take comments, et cetera, and we'll make final changes in the next couple of weeks, yes.
And I think that is, just to jump in here, is kind of something that this committee has been looking for before, that I actually appreciate Mr. Bolton showing. This could look completely, well, not completely different, but it could look like a different animal when it goes into its, article for town meeting. There could be things that have been changed in this process. So that's what this is here for tonight. I know COPC always wants to get a head start on things. Well, here's your opportunity. So that's what I appreciate Mr. Bolton and Mr. Canty as well being here for.
And just one last thing, how do we forward our comments through to you?
I think if you have some comments or questions, we could probably do that through myself and Chelsea to get over, just to keep it so Mr. Bolton doesn't get
Thank you very much.
162 different emails. Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, we want the comments, we want the thoughts. We're going to other committees and other bodies as well. We want their thoughts on this. Nothing is set in stone, and obviously we know that it has to be approved by town meeting. We want town meeting's thoughts on this. We may agree or disagree, but we're certainly going to give you at least our explanation and rationale as to why we went the way we went. And that's what I've tried to do on some of the major points here, is to explain our thought process as to why we got to where we got. And if we got to the wrong place, then let's fix it.
All right. Mr. Canty, the hour's getting late here. We were ahead of time, and then we're like 35 minutes behind time.
Well, it wouldn't be the COPC if we weren't running slightly behind schedule. So I think it is one thing. Steve's presentation was very informative, but I think one thing that I would like to particularly emphasize is that I think there's a strength in the fact, one of the reasons that the community would benefit from both the CPC and a land bank is that the land bank would operate outside of the town meeting cycle in a way that would make it able to be more attractive to potential sellers of parcels that cannot wait for one reason or another for a town meeting cycle because they need to sell their property now. They need to make a decision on the disposition of a particular parcel at this period. It's also a different pot of money, and there's a lot of restrictions. If an open space parcel is purchased with CPC funds, there's very restrictive conservation restrictions that are imposed on that. Generally, that's not a bad thing, but you can't even do things like run pipes or electrical infrastructure through those parcels, which sometimes you might want to do, whereas you could, if you wanted to do something like that because of where it was located, these parcels would allow you to do those sorts of things. And I think it should be emphasized just how difficult it would be to remove an elected official. I know there's been a lot of talk in recent years in Plymouth about the charter, and I would just point out, like, let's use me as an example. Let's say I took an oath of office when I became a selectman. Let's say I spent my entire 3-year term completely ignoring the charter and doing whatever I wanted, no matter what. The only recourse as a practical matter that the voters would have would be not electing me when my term is up, because in order to recall me, I have a safe harbor period where you can't recall me, then you have a certain period of time to get a number of signatures, then you have to have a turnout at an election of like 20% of registered voters. And when we are having an election about the charter of the town, we only get about 16% to come out. So if you had, and that's, you might be able to, if a selectman did something particularly egregious, maybe you could get over 20%. But if you had a land bank commission that's down on the ticket, a lot of people are not even going to know who those people are. So you're not realistically going to be able to remove those people if they're acting in bad faith and not complying with their rules. Now, just to be clear, I do plan on following the charter as closely as I can. I didn't mean to throw myself under the bus there. But I think it's important to emphasize that it is very difficult, exceedingly difficult, to remove an elected official, whereas an appointed official can be removed for cause. And if you feel, because there are multiple appointing authorities, if one board with appointing authority removed someone, and other appointing authorities thought that person was unjustly removed, they could appoint that person next time an availability comes up on their end. So I think the checks and balances of the appointed versus elected favor the appointed significantly more than the elected proposition would. So those are, I don't want me to belabor the point, but I just think it was important to highlight those aspects.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Canty. Seeing no further questions, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. I know you wanted to get out of here early, Steve, but here we are. And anyways, next up, I'd like to have Mr. Williams begin the discussion that he started last month on sand and clear cut enforcement, which is an ongoing battle here in the town of Plymouth. So please go ahead, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to try to keep this short so that we can get back a little bit on schedule. But the basic issue here is that there seems to be a reluctance on the part of the town for enforcing some of the bylaws that are very important for maintaining the quality of water in the town. Clear cutting is one of those. It leads to runoff, which gets into our ponds and streams, and which, as most of you know, also can get into the aquifer that way. I'm also the president of the Herring Ponds Watershed Association, and we've had a 3-year battle trying to get the town to send somebody out who would enforce clear cutting. Why are we interested in that? We're interested in that, and without pointing fingers about who was involved on the town's part, they came out and they looked at several of the clear-cut areas that were around our pond. I pointed out to them that 5 years ago there were 2 of them. Now there were 13 of them. And it gets to the point where people are actually cutting down trees on their property and town property so that they can sell their house for more money because they have a view. If there's nothing more short-sighted than that, I don't know what it is. But to be clear, it makes it easier for people to do that. I have a statistic. I've said it before. Most of you know about PFAS, the forever chemicals. They're permitted in drinking water at the current level of 20 parts per trillion. Our aquifer beneath us has 550 gallons of 50 billion gallons of water. 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 50 billion gall Do you have any idea how many pounds of PFAS it would take to render that useless? 80 pounds, and they're thinking of reducing the level of poor drinking water to 8 parts per trillion. And that's, so why is this so important? Well, sole source aquifer is sole source because underneath this aquifer, there's a layer of granite. And the next layer of water is somewhere beneath that layer of granite. So it would be very, very expensive to go after that. The thing that really got me thinking about all of this is in December of 2022, I was informed by people who lived in Little Herring Pond area that there was someone out on town land with a chainsaw cutting down trees. One of the residents of Ponds of Plymouth had hired a landscaping man manning a chainsaw to cut down trees on town property around Little Herring Pond. So this person who is a self-appointed caretaker for Little Herring Pond in a good way called the Conservation Commission. Now, the Conservation Commission are volunteers. They don't have guns. They don't have enforcement techniques. They're not trained. That they refuse to come out is not surprising. The second people that were called were David Gould's department. And David didn't have his enforcement arm at that time. It was being taken away from him. And he came out, but he was unwilling to face a guy with a chainsaw that was running. The third people who were called were the police. The police came out and said, we don't do this. We're not trained to do this. It's not our job. So the question that remains is, if not those three groups of people, then who? Now, runoff has been identified in a water quality study that we did several years ago as being the number 3 cause of pollution of ponds, behind septic, number 1, and sediment from the cranberry bogs, number 2, and then runoff. Our pond has had a cyanobacteria bloom 3 out of the 5 past years. The pond gets under advisory. People are advised not to go swimming because of toxins, because of contact allergies, dogs that drink it up, children, small children that get involved. It's not a pretty sight. And the way cyanobacteria works is it works that as the water gets hotter, it gets more prevalent over just plain old algae, who we thought was a pain in the neck. But it turns out to be that the algae was a piece of cake compared to cyanobacteria. So this is just going to get worse. It's going to get worse in town. It's going to get worse even when we say, oh, well, we're not going to take this guy to court. We're not going to fine him for doing it. We've got a guy on our pond who clear cuts down to the pond on a steep slope twice a year, and he's been doing it for the last 5 years, and nobody will fine him. So I'm not saying we should take him and beat him up or fine him or take him to court, but even just talking to him maybe would move the bar a little bit different location. I'm convinced that if we allow this to continue, that other ponds will start doing it. Our pond will get worse. There'll be more runoff. There'll be more ponds with cyanobacteria. And we average about 8 to 10 ponds in Plymouth that are known that have cyanobacteria. And it worries the living heck out of me that we're so cavalier about our water, because all of our ponds go right into the aquifer. They exchange water freely. And if we don't take the MVP attitude towards water in town, then we may be making a fatal mistake. So I'm interested in knowing from the town at some point what plans they might have for looking at these things. These are bylaws that are on the books. We don't enforce them. We got to be the nice guys. We don't want to be bothered taking them to court and having something thrown out. But, you know, if you do a risk analysis on it, it's quite clear the way we're headed with our water supply. And it's scary. So I'm interested in what other people think about this. There's no town representatives here, I don't think, but at some point, I think somebody, well, other than Kevin, sorry about that. My fault. Much apologies. I appreciate that you come to these meetings, I really do. But somebody's got to do something and direct people to go out and protect our water environment, because it's an existential issue. I'm done.
Okay. I think the biggest question and the biggest ask out of that entire piece would be who does it fall under for enforcement? And I think that's the biggest question, obviously. Obviously, there's all the environmental impacts that you spoke about, but the biggest piece in this topic is, you know, who does that fall under enforcement? But Ms. Adelman, you had a statement?
I was
question.
asking, I thought it might be inspectional services, but I don't know.
I'm not sure either, so I think that this is a question that I'm more than willing to take up with the town manager, or maybe it's something that we need to actually go seek select board help in figuring out who enforces these. Yeah.
And it-
Right, no, I understand nobody is doing it right now, but who should be doing this?
And I think it needs to be addressed soon, sooner than later.
Sure. Mrs. Cavaco, did you? Sorry, I thought I saw your hand.
Just some clarification. Are you suggesting, Mr. Williams, that we actually stop people from taking trees down on their private property?
That's what the law reads, within 50 feet of a water body, yes.
So, and one of the things that you mentioned, that Mr. Gould had something taken away from him. Mr. Gould never had anything taken away from him. He still has the authority. I think it's called something different now, Energy and Environmental Affairs, that department. So I'm not sure what was taken away, but
Well, his department is smaller, and a number of the harbor police have gone to the police department out of his department. So yes, something has been taken away from him.
no, there's just been a reorganization of a department. He still has the same amount of natural resources.
I don't think I want to get into discussion of, I think
So-
the biggest question here is the enforcement, but I don't want to get into a tit for tat for.
Do we have the particular bylaws that are being violated? Do we have them? Do you have a copy of them? Can you send them?
I don't carry them around with me, no. But
Do
they
you-
are available
Can you
on the
maybe?
town website.
I think what the solution here is to get, and I'm more than happy to pick up and carry this mantle, is to take those bylaws and bring them to the town manager or the assistant town manager, whoever is going to be assigned to helping me through this. And figuring out the biggest piece here is whose department it falls under for enforcement. And then we go from there. And I'm more than happy to get that, try and push that answer for you, Mr. Williams.
That's what we need. Thank you, Matt.
Any more discussion on this?
Quickly,
Mr.
maybe
Delafield.
they could- once identified, maybe they could just come and be part of the conversation.
That is also another piece. I mean, I don't want to have to speak for them or misspeak for them. But first off, I think is identifying this and starting to nail it down. All right. Anything else? No? Alan, do you have anything for legislative oversight or charter review?
I'll keep it very quick. I know
Okay.
we're up against the clock. Legislative Oversight Committee, we have not actually met since our last presentation here at our last meeting in June, but we do have a meeting scheduled for the 29th of July, 6 o'clock at the Rope Walk Room, where the agenda will have on it a couple of past town articles that have been brought up to me lately that I think need immediate attention, having to do with filing of, can't think of the right term right now, but if we purchase a parcel of land as a town meeting, it's come to my attention that there's a huge number of properties that have not gone through the whole process and are out lingering, so we'll get to the bottom of that one. So it'll be a new meeting this July 29th, so everyone's welcome to tune into that. Switching quickly to charter review. Charter review has taken a lot of time in the last 2 to 3 weeks. We're getting down to the end of it. We're trying to get on the town fall town meeting agenda, warrant. We had a meeting earlier this week where we had a quorum. We went over the final document in its entirety. We're pretty happy with it. It's being rewritten now and renumbered. We will get that out on our website if it's not already on there today for town meeting members to look at. Pretty happy with the document. We did develop a hiccup because we were trying to get the document off 2 or 3 people's computer with different apps that were used to change the document and track the document, and it wasn't compatible. So now we do have that under control. So charter review will be on time to get in the warrant when it opens July 30th. So that's all I have for this evening. Next month, I'll have a more extensive report on legislative oversight. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That was, question. Sorry, you thought you got off easy, Alan. Mr. Weber.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Costello. Earlier this evening, we touched upon something through the town clerk regarding vice chairs and their service on this committee. And could you talk about, because Kelly had indicated to us through her comments that she thought that even though she disagrees with the fact that vice chairs should be here and/or, I obviously saw tonight that they're going to be sworn in separately, but I do notice that we have some precincts here that continue to have vice chairs and no chairs come. So how did your committee address that, and what can we look for coming down as a result of your committee's work?
Yes, when we were talking about the legislative aspect of the charter, that came up as an issue. I know last year, relatively new town clerk had some concerns about the way committee of precinct chairs had been running for all these past years. There was a thought amongst the new charter review committee to keep the COPC strictly chairman from each precinct only and have them sworn in. I, on the other hand, was an advocate for keeping it open. I always felt that we're all equal, 162 of us. Each 9 members of the precinct chair of your precinct are equal. So if you were, in the past, if you were not able to attend as a chair, you could get down the chain of command, call and ask your vice chair to attend. If they weren't available, I've gone as deep before as a clerk. And I know some other precincts have used town meeting members that weren't even officers, but I never really had a problem with that because I felt that they were equal. So to answer your question, the charter that we're going to put before you this fall has an amendment in there that states all chairs and vice chairs of each precinct will be sworn in and be members of COPC in the event they need to vote. And I'll just ask for clarification. Joe, do you remember that to be exactly what we wrote?
Whether it's exactly
Yeah.
that, doesn't sense it.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the, to answer your question, if the charter goes through the way we have prepared it, going forward, next year, both the chair and the vice chair would be sworn in on this evening next year. And able to conduct business, come down and conduct business. Thank you.
Yeah, Mrs. Montanari.
Just a quick question to that. If you go through the chair and the vice chair, third person in line could be the clerk, but is that saying that there's no one on that existing precinct who could come here at the COPC and vote?
I mean, we have to see what and you, any gentleman here that, I know the two of you sit on the charter review, but the way I would have to see what the exact language is, but they couldn't, if you're not a chair or vice chair, you couldn't vote, but that doesn't mean you can't have a representative here. If those two people couldn't make it, they could be here to report back to the committee, but they just wouldn't be allowed to vote.
Through you, Chair, that's exactly right. You would be able to still have representation here this evening if you're further down the line below vice chair, but you would not have the ability to vote on anything substantive that this committee took up that night.
That's right. I mean, I asked Ms. Kuhn to come for precinct 17 and told her pretty much that, yes.
And I think that's the way it should be myself, so unless there's any objection within this committee, but that's how it would be going forward if we're fortunate enough to have the document pass in the fall. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Costello. Okay, next up is myself. I just wanted to get out there. I get asked a lot, and so hopefully you can pass this very quick information back to your precincts in regards to I don't know when a meeting is, I don't know how to get agendas, I don't know how to get past minutes, but I'm going to keep this very quick because it's actually very quick to do through the town website. So right on the main page, there's kind of two spots to go. Agenda and minutes tab, and then there's also the meeting calendar, which is at the bottom, which would kind of, yeah, so if you look, Chelsea's kind of pointing to the agenda and minutes is that little almost folded map looking thing, so you could click there, but if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see, thank you, Chelsea, you'll see, you can go down a little bit, you'll see that there's that meetings calendar, and you can scroll all through there. You can see actually today's meetings. You'll see the Committee of Precinct chairs up there as well. And then any meetings that are happening within the week are in that blue. And then actually, you can actually click to stay informed. Have we got, I can't quite, I should probably put my glasses on so I could see a little bit better for you. But once you click on those, you can see more details. So Chelsea, if you go from the Committee of Precinct chairs to more details, right up at the top there, right under meeting calendar. Right under Committee of Precinct chairs, says the date and then more details. And that's where you go. If you scroll down, you'll see a link to the actual agenda, which is right by the little hand that Chelsea's got right there. And then you click on that, that brings up a PDF of the agenda for that meeting. But to kind of go back to get notifications of when these agendas are posted, we all know that it's at a minimum 48 hours before the meeting. If you go to the notifications for agendas and minutes and you click on Stay Informed, basically what you can do is up at the top, you just go through the step-by-step instructions, but you enter your email address, and then please also note once you do that, it'll also give you an option to get text alerts when things are notified. You don't have to do both. You could do, but you could get that text option. So you're going to choose email or text alert, And then you're going to go through and receive a confirm your email, because they want to make sure that it's an actual person. So then you'd go into your email, you'll have an email from the town page that you just click on a link, and it's going to confirm that. We can't really show that without opening up somebody's personal email today. Once you do that, you must click that link, and it's going to confirm your address. You'll now get a subscription notification email, and you will be able to choose all the different committees that you want. I get almost too many now at this point and probably need to unsubscribe from some. But you can click on the drop down and choose which committee you want. You can choose whether it's minutes that you just want when they're posted or agendas. And you'll start receiving those notifications almost immediately. And I'm sure some of you already do it, but if you could, I can put these steps into a document for you guys if you'd like to have it sent around to your different committee members, town meeting members. But it's very simple. You'll be notified instantaneously when something is posted by the town clerk as far as minutes and agendas. And it's the easiest way to stay up to date on when meetings happen here in town. So hopefully I kept that kind of quick and brief for you. All right. It's the easiest thing I probably had to update on there. All right. Moving on to the next item, this was something that Mrs. Cavaco brought up at the last meeting, and I said I'd put it on as an agenda item. The COPC meeting schedule. This is just, it's not going to change the date of the meeting or, the third Thursday or that other option that we have closer to fall and springtown meeting of having a Monday, 2 meetings a month and having one Monday. I believe this was in regards to the time of the meeting, the start time of the meeting. But Mrs. Cavaco, if you have any comments or thoughts, the floor is yours.
Yes, it's just, many of the meetings now, our town meetings are starting at 6 o'clock. And I know that this board is used to coming in at 7. So, look at it, it's 9 o'clock. We still have some agenda to go through. And just wondering, even if we start at 6:30, it's an extra half hour. Hopefully people wouldn't mind starting an extra half hour early. And then, it's kind of easier. The hour gets late, people get tired. Supposed to be in our pajamas by now. Kidding. But just wondering if this committee would entertain an earlier start time.
Mr. Williams.
Yeah, I like the fact that we start at 7 because we're outside until the sun goes down, and it's a lot better to get your work done outside, go for a swim even in the light, and come to the meeting as it's getting closer to dark. That's why I like the later starts.
Mr. Delafield and then Mr. Costello.
Yeah, I just would like to confirm for that and many reasons that I like where we start now. I like the later time, and I think it would be very awkward for me to come earlier.
Mr. Costello?
Yeah, I would have not even thought about this, quite honestly, a year or two ago, but now 2 or 3 other committees I'm on start at 6, and it really is an advantage. For my schedule, I'm not going to speak for everyone, but it gets you into the meeting, it gets you home a little bit quicker, and I'd be in favor of a 6, even a 6:30 start if there was some effort to be a compromise.
Mrs. Allen.
I think it's difficult for working people to get here before 7, especially if you live in the outskirts of town. And I would like to keep it at 7.
Mr. Brewster?
Yeah, I'm exactly where you are on that from a work standpoint. I get out of work at 5, and I'd like to have dinner before. If you're talking about getting out at 8, I don't want to have dinner after 8.
Oops, excuse me, Mr. Brown.
My situation is I have to feed my family at 5,
and get the dishes cleaned up. And today I brushed it and I made it at 1 minute of 6. It's not comfortable.
Any further discussion? Okay. I don't have a motion. I don't have anything, so it's just discussion at this point.
I'll make a motion just to get
Get
the issue.
Mr. Weber, sure.
I'll make a motion that we start at 6 PM.
Second.
Mr. Weber has motioned, yeah, and Mrs. Cavaco has seconded, to start the COPC meetings at 6 PM. Now we're into discussion of that as well, so we can discuss that. If there's any further discussion.
And if it isn't 6, I mean, 6:30 is also an option, and I understand what it's like to feed your
We have a
family.
motion before.
Yeah, well, we'll see how 6 does in the
Yeah.
motion, and then you can start making more motions, I guess. Yeah, exactly. I do have a discussion point. Mr. LaFrari has one before me as well. Go ahead.
You know, is it possible to maybe have a different time for the different time of year? Summer hours or winter hours?
And my only comment, personally, on top of that, I do also work till 5, and sometimes it's in the city. Unfortunately, I'm not always in Plymouth, and I like to be able to be here for these meetings, and allowing that time to get back from the city some days. And I know my personal schedule is, not the issue for the COPC, but that's just my insight on it. And I'd like to think that, and encourage more people that work. There are more and more people that are commuting from Plymouth to the city, to encourage them to be able to make a meeting. That's kind of my feeling on starting at 7. I understand the late hour. We were doing great for a while there tonight, but kind of fell off the rails. So right now, are there any other comments or discussion before I call for a vote? So just to repeat, Chelsea, I know you wanted to hear that. There's a motion that's for 6 PM to move the COPC meeting to 6 PM. I have to do roll because we do have 2 attendees online. We'll start with Precinct 1.
No.
Precinct 2, no. Precinct 3.
Yes.
Precinct 4.
No.
Precinct 5.
Abstain.
Precinct 6.
Yes.
Precinct 7.
No.
Precinct 8.
No.
Precinct 9.
Abstain.
Precinct 10.
Precinct 10, yes.
Precinct 11.
Precinct 11, no.
Precinct 12.
No.
Precinct 13.
No.
I don't believe anyone's joined us from Precinct 14. Precinct 15.
No.
Precinct 16.
No.
Precinct 17.
No.
Precinct 18.
No.
Chelsea, could you give me the number on that, just to confirm, please?
What was that?
It's, could you say that a little louder again? Yeah.
You have 3 yes, 2 abstentions, and the rest are no, so no gets the majority vote.
Yes, all right. So that was 3 yes, 2 abstentions, and the remaining were no's. So it does not carry. Okay. Moving on to the new business. Anyone
Mr.
have
Chairman?
any? Yeah?
Can I make a motion that we start our monthly meeting at 6:30?
Mr. Costello has a motion on the floor for starting at 6:30. Would anyone like to second that?
Second.
Mrs. Cavaco would like to second that. Discussion. Mr. Costello?
The new piece of discussion I wanted to bring up, and it actually goes to what you said just before we voted, and I didn't want to interrupt that vote, but We come here once a month. There was talk to come here twice a month. That hasn't materialized. But we do come here once a month.
We've done that.
How many-
We typically do that.
How many times would you suggest since it's been approved? Have we been twice a month?
Before both these last two town meetings.
What's that?
Before both these last two town meetings, we've come Monday and Thursday. Actually, we came a few
I
times.
think there's two
before.
times in the last year that we've approved that.
Okay.
So to make this an irrelevant
Mm-hmm.
committee that everyone stood up and talked about, we have yet to really do that. But the second point I'm going to make is on 2 or 3 occasions this evening, you've talked about the clock. You've talked about we're running behind. You're talking about we got to speed this thing up. So I think there should be some effort to come here and meet and not have to worry about the 9 o'clock hour or the 9:30 hour. We have a lot of pressing business in this committee. And I think we should make some provisions to address it without worrying about the clock. So I want to make that a key point in this next vote. Thank you.
Sure. I'll just respond to that. That was just to actually keep the meeting moving, which is my charge. And second of all, I think I was pretty liberal with a lot of the time this evening. But Mr. Brewster.
Yeah, I was going to echo what the chair was saying, that the agenda is the agenda, and the chair is tasked with keeping the agenda to what the time is, whether we go 2 hours from 6 o'clock or 2 hours from 7 o'clock or 7:30. It's the agenda. And I think that it's not going to change the pace of the meeting if we meet at 6:30 as opposed to 7. And I think it's just splitting hairs.
Well, we do have a motion on the floor that's been seconded to move the meeting to 6:30. Is there any further discussion? If not, I'll call the roll again, and Chelsea, when you're done, if you could give me the tally. Precinct 1.
No.
Precinct 2, no. Precinct 3.
Yes.
Precinct 4.
No.
Precinct 5.
Abstain.
Precinct 6. Mrs. Kabaka.
Yes.
Precinct 7.
No.
Precinct 8.
No.
Precinct 9.
Abstain.
Precinct 10.
Precinct 10, yes.
Precinct 11.
Precinct 11, no.
Precinct 12.
Precinct 12, no.
Precinct 13.
Precinct 13, no.
No one from Precinct 14. Precinct 15.
No.
Precinct 16.
No.
Precinct 17.
No.
And Precinct 18.
No.
You have 3 yeses, 2 abstentions, and 12 noes.
Yep, so 3 yeses, 2 abstentions, and 12 noes. So the motion does not carry. Is there any further motion? 6:45?
Please.
Okay, move. I'm in on that. I'm usually here by 6:59. Is there, moving on to new business, is there any new business anyone would like to bring before the COPC? Not seeing anything, we'll move on to, well, we have old business. I just wanted to, I know that there was might have been some confusion regarding the topic of the land acknowledgement, when that was coming. I think some people might have thought it was going to be for this meeting. As I'd stated when the first part of the town council initial review came out, that they received some more information and wanted some more time to look into it, that we'll actually be bringing that up in August. And it was also, I was trying to do that to allow this committee to also be able to go back to their precincts and have discussions if they saw fit regarding that. So just kind of keep that in mind for the next meeting. Yep. Mr. Williams.
I've had a lot of correspondence from people asking where I stood on this. It wasn't clear from past meetings, and I just want to make it very clear that I am in favor of this land acknowledgement.
Okay. I don't really want to get into discussion regarding it. That's just more, but I appreciate you regarding making that statement, but we will definitely be having this as an agenda item and a discussion item next month. Thank you, Mr. Williams. Any other old business? Mr. Weber?
Thank you. Earlier in this evening, I didn't want to butt into the presentations that were being made on the, by the town manager and others on the traffic mitigation and safety study, and some comments that came forth from the dais here about townwide traffic studies. It should become as no surprise to people that the town of Plymouth is extremely difficult to manage. It's too big. It's too voluminous. It's too heavily populated. But I did learn one thing tonight. Joe Hutchinson has stolen James Downey from Precinct 3, and that's why our traffic study has had the brakes put on it. So all I'm saying is, don't set your goals too high when the town staff comes out and everything's great at the offset, because things tend to slow down as it progresses. We were told that our traffic study would be completed in 9 months. I think we're at 13 months now, and we're told that we're 95% complete. However, the scope of work that was outlined in our traffic study was very encouraging to us. There was going to be multiple community outreach meetings. There was going to be several pop-up meetings. There was going to be at least 2 select board meetings. There's been 1 community outreach meeting, and the company and the town tells us that our plan is 95% complete. So my phone has been ringing based on that 1 community outreach meeting that we have, which was very well attended. But concerns came from that the presentation to that point wasn't addressing some of the needs of Precinct 3, 4, and 5 that involve the downtown and North Plymouth area. And the people were upset about that and wanted to know what was going to happen. So I approached James Downey. He must have been meeting with Joe. And the issue was that he said, that's not true. We're still going to work on things. It's not a final recommendation. I said, well, then I hope that the next 5% of this study involves all the community outreach meetings that were set up in the original scope of operations. So stay tuned for updates as I get them. Thank you.
Joe, slow your horses down a little bit. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Hutchinson.
I'll keep it quick.
No,
The part of your program, I think, was with a regional planning council, and is that true? I'm pretty sure, right?
No.
Nope. So it was just the town, just the. I thought you.
downtown
Oh,
and
that's
North
right.
Plymouth corridor.
You had the civil engineering company. Never mind.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Any other old business? Not seeing any online as well. So we've got, obviously, the fall town meeting warrant timelines. It's about to kick off. The warrant opens at the end of the month, July 30th. It closes August 9th. Select Board Advisory and Finance will start beginning to review the warrant on August 20th. Our next meeting is going to be August 15th, but before we adjourn, I'd like to have public comment from those in the room or anyone that is online. I see Mr. Abbott. If you could unmute yourself and speak, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm only going to speak for 2 minutes. But regarding the land bank, there's a stunning omission here. Town meeting has been taken entirely out of the loop, no role whatsoever. And I think that's a big mistake. We're a town meeting form of government with very strong, well-organized, and prepared town meeting, representing all parts of the town. And I don't think we should rely on 9 sets of eyes of appointed members who don't necessarily have any kind of a diverse representation of parts of the town when we should have 166 sets of eyes looking at these projects. It's a big mistake, a huge mistake, to make speed the consideration. Speed breeds mistakes. When the CPC was set up by the state legislature, they put town meeting in a very clear role to play a part. And I think town meeting should definitely be part of the land bank, and I hope they reconsider and put town meeting in the loop. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott. Any other public comment? Anyone in the room? Seeing none, take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right. All those in, and seconded by Mr. Brown. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Good night, everyone.
Aye.